She believed she had found her fairy tale romance with the perfect man until their wedding night turned into a nightmare that left her questioning everything. The golden chandeliers shimmered above their wedding reception, casting a warm glow over their love, yet an ominous undercurrent loomed beneath their happiness. What dark secret was he hiding that could destroy the love they built? And could she ever recover from what she saw? Jairo Thomas was the embodiment of every girl's dream. Tall, handsome, and hugely wealthy, his customized suits strengthened his perfectly cut body, and his charming smile could melt the coldest heart. Wherever he went, admiration followed. Women wooed over him, and men envied his effortless attraction. His life looked perfect, except for one deeply guarded secret. Yet, despite the attention, his heart belonged to one person, Liana Carter. Liana was the envy of her friends. She was gorgeous, with soft brown curls and delicate features that radiated warmth. From the moment Jairo met her at the festival, under the glow of lantern-lit streets, their connection had been instant, the chemistry beyond depth. He swept her off her feet, and their passionate affair became the talk of the town. Dinner dates at five-star restaurants, weekend getaways to fancy hotels, and expensive gifts became Liana's new normal. She had never experienced such attention or lavish gestures, and her friends were filled with envy. Her friends would often ask, their eyes shining with jealousy, "Liana, where did you find this man? He's perfect." The admiration didn't stop there. Even her parents were so happy for her, praising Jairo's generosity and Liana's luck. Despite the flashy lifestyle and picture perfect love, there was one thing that made Liana worried. She and Jairo shared deep conversations, laughter, and intimacy, but never physical intimacy. As much as Jairo adored her, he always seemed to pull away before things went too far. It was very strange to Liana. When she asked him about it, he would say softly, "Let's save ourselves for marriage. Our love deserves purity." It was very strange to Liana. How could a man, greatly desired by so many women, refuse to sleep with a woman? She thought to herself. One evening, she playfully touched him, urging him to share a more intimate moment. Trying to lure him into bed, she placed her hands on him, kissed him deeply, trying to measure if he had any physical response. He did. Jairo had a healthy, strong manhood and responded passionately to her touch. But every time Liana wanted to take a step closer, Jairo would pull away just before things escalated. Jairo gently resisted, his voice soft and sincere. "I love you too much, and I don't want us to rush this. We have all the time after marriage." Liana, though confused, found some relief in his words. She thought that maybe Jairo was just old-fashioned, and there was nothing wrong with that. Besides, everything else about their relationship was perfect. He was attentive, thoughtful, and respectful, everything she had ever wanted in a partner. Yet, deep down, an unsettling concern kept coming up. It whispered in the quiet moments creeping into her mind when she was alone. The months flew by, and soon their wedding day came. It was the most flashy wedding the town had ever seen. The ballroom was decorated beautifully, and celebrities mingled with politicians at the event. The scent of fresh orchids filled the air, and the grand chandelier sparkled as if it had witnessed 1,000 love stories before theirs. Liana's dress, custom made, was the talk of the event. The entire town was overwhelmed with talk of their fairy tale marriage and Liana was convinced she had found her happily ever after. But then came the night of the wedding. In the most expensive honeymoon suite, Liana eagerly hoped for their long awaited union. She felt the butterflies in her stomach as she thought of their first night as husband and wife. The moonlight seeped through the silk curtains, casting a soft glow on the room. Jairo walked in, looking as handsome as ever, his eyes filled with warmth and admiration. But when it came time for them to consummate their marriage, she wore a beautiful lingerie that could turn any man on and laid on the rose petal bed, waiting for Jairo. But surprisingly, Jairo resisted. He began to make excuses that he was tired. Liana could see desire in his eyes. His body responded to her touch, his manhood firm with expectation. But something always held him back. He refused to consummate the marriage. He refused to consummate the marriage. His excuses, though polite, started wearing thin. Liana was frustrated. She laid on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't believe what was happening. The fragrance of the roses surrounding them did nothing to soothe her mind. Jairo was sound asleep, as if nothing was wrong. The following weeks were no different. Each night, Jairo avoided their marital duty, offering unclear explanations that left Liana both confused and discouraged, her mind twisted with dark thoughts. Was he part of a secret society? Was he gay? Is something else wrong with him? The troubled suspicions tormented her until one night she could no longer take it. I'm leaving this marriage. I want a divorce, she screamed in pain, her voice shaking. You have a manhood. You get a good erection. Why can't you make love to me? What is wrong with you, Jairo? Tears filled her eyes as she began packing her bags, her heart heavy with betrayal. The pristine honeymoon suite now felt suffocating, its walls closing in on her. Jairo stood there, weak and silent. For the first time, his calm attitude was broken. He knew he couldn't avoid the truth any longer. As Liana grabbed her suitcase, he grabbed her wrist, pulling her close. Please, Liana, I love you. I will explain. Please don't leave me, he pleaded. He pleaded, his voice laced with a desperation she had never heard before. Gently, she allowed herself to be drawn into his embrace. He kissed her and moved toward the bed. Liana could not believe it. Finally, it's happening. Jairo gently laid her down on the bed, began to make love, but as the moment of his discharge came close, something horrific happened. Something Liana had never imagined. Jairo let out a deep moan, and along with his semen, feces came from his anus, splashing onto the silk sheets of their lavish honeymoon bed. The odor was unbearable, and the bed was soiled with the foul mixture, staining the once pristine white linen. Liana jumped out of bed, covered in disgust and disbelief. Her stomach stirred violently, and she ran into the marble-floored bathroom, vomiting into the gold-rimmed sink. Jairo buried his face in his hands, shame washing over him like a relentless tide. This is why I've avoided sleeping with you and every other woman, he screamed, his voice breaking, echoing off the ornate bedroom walls. He sat down on the edge of the bed, burying his head in shame, his body trembling. Liana slowly walked out of the bathroom, gripping the doorway for support in utter disbelief. She saw him sitting there, looking smaller than she had ever seen him before, and felt pity for him. She sat beside him in silence, the weight of unspoken words between them. It started years ago. Something happened to my body. I've sought help from countless doctors, but no one can fix me. Jairo said, his voice filled with quiet anguish. She stared at him, her mind numb. The man she loved, the man who had given her everything, was hiding this horrifying secret, and she had no idea how to respond. As days turned into weeks, the odd and disgusting pattern continued. Every time they tried to make love, feces followed, turning what should have been moments of passion into humiliating nightmares. It had become Liana's new torment, an existence marked by daily humiliation and frustration. She washed the bed sheets every other day, her hands soaked in the bad smell of their failed intimacy, the scent lingering even after she scrubbed them clean. The sight of Jairo, once so handsome and desirable, now filled her with irritation. His sculpted face, which once made her heart race, now only reminded her of disappointment. Her friends, not knowing about her nightmare, continued to envy her life. "You're so lucky, Liana. He's rich, kind, and loves you. What more could you ask for?" they would say, not knowing the nightmare that she was dealing with behind closed doors. Jairo's parents, too. They constantly reminded Liana how lucky she was to have a man who cared so deeply for her. They had no idea the torment she silently endured, the nights she spent crying into a pillow that reeked of their failed marriage. One afternoon, Liana met her friends at an upscale restaurant. As they were busy comparing their husbands, giggling over expensive wine, Liana remained quiet, her mind elsewhere. But her silence didn't go unnoticed. "Liana, what's wrong?" one of her friends asked. "You've been so distant lately." She forced a smile, not ready to admit the crushing reality of her marriage. "I'm just tired. Marriage it's different from what I had imagined." Her friend chuckled, swirling her drink. "You mean perfect? Please. You married the man every woman dreams of. You're living the life we all want." Liana's throat was tight, and for a moment she almost spoke the truth, but she couldn't. The shame was too much. Instead, she excused herself and left the restaurant, feeling more exhausted by her marriage than ever before. Back home, she found Jairo in his grand living room, flipping through a business magazine, a look of guilt shadowing his face as she entered. "I started," but she cut him off, her patience shattered. "I can't do this anymore." "I'm leaving," she said, her voice shaking. "I cannot live like this. I can't wake up every morning worrying about if today will be different. I feel disgusted and overwhelmed." Jairo's eyes filled with shock, and he rushed to her side, gripping her hands with desperation. "Please don't leave me. I'll find a solution. I promise I'll fix this." But Liana had heard it all before. No amount of promises could erase the months of sorrow, the humiliation, the disgust that clung to her like an inescapable shadow every time they attempted to make love. Her bags were packed, and this time she meant it. With one last look at the man she had once adored, Liana left the house, her heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Tears streamed down her face as she walked away from the life she thought would bring her happiness, knowing that she would never forget the torment she endured. Months passed. Liana tried to rebuild her life, though it was far from easy. The gossip followed her everywhere. Her friends, once envious of her perfect life, now whispered cruel words behind her back. She couldn't even keep a good man like Jairo. "How sad," they murmured, unaware of the silent agony she had endured. Jairo, on the other hand, was a broken man. He threw himself into his work, traveling constantly in search of new business opportunities, and, secretly, a cure for his condition. During a trip to Rwanda, he met a businessman named Junko, who noticed Jairo's distracted. Is everything okay? Junko asked after their discussions. Jairo, desperate for any help, confessed his secret. To his surprise, Junko nodded knowingly. I know of a healer in a remote village who deals with unusual sickness. I cannot promise anything, but it's worth a try. With nothing to lose, Jairo traveled to the village seeking the healer. The process was long and arduous, the treatments strange and unfamiliar. But after weeks of relentless effort, Jairo was finally cured. The shame, the physical fear that had plagued him for so long was gone. Returning home, Jairo couldn't stop thinking about Liana. She had suffered because of him, endured something no woman should have to. He knew he had to make things right. When Jairo showed up at Liana's doorstep, her heart skipped a beat. He looked different, almost like a weight had been lifted off him, his posture straighter, his eyes clearer. I'm cured, Liana, he said softly. I fixed it, and I'm here to ask for your forgiveness and to ask if you'd give me another chance. Liana stared at him, her emotions a whirlwind of confusion and longing. Part of her wanted to scream, to remind him of the hell she had gone through. But another part, the part that still loved him, saw the sincerity in his eyes. They stood in silence for a moment before Liana finally spoke. Jairo, I need time. What you went through was unimaginable, but the pain I endured because of it was real. I can't just forget that. Her voice was firm but filled with sadness. Jairo nodded solemnly. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry and that I will do everything I can to make amends. Over the following months, Jairo worked tirelessly to prove his commitment. They attended therapy together and he supported Liana's healing process. He respected her need for space and never pushed her to make any decisions before she was ready. Liana began to see Jairo's genuine efforts and gradually allowed herself to open up again. Slowly, they rebuilt their relationship piece by piece. After a few months, they decided to give their marriage another chance. Liana went over to Jairo's house to make sure that his sickness was cured, and she was very happy to experience Jairo in all his glory. She moved back to her matrimonial home, and they lived happily ever after. The lesson from this story is that while love and commitment are important in a relationship, honesty and transparency are even more crucial. Hiding secrets, no matter how painful, can lead to deeper suffering for both partners. True healing and reconciliation come only through trust, effort, and understanding. Always prioritize open communication in your relationships to build a foundation that can withstand any challenge. Thank you for watching my channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more exciting and thought-provoking stories. Once upon a time, in a well-known city called J, there lived a wealthy family that had only one son, Idris, who was pressured to get married early. But Idris wanted a responsible wife, so he decided to disguise himself and relocate to a neighboring village to live the life of a lonely poor man in hope of finding a responsible lady for a wife. Jawa was a city known for flexing. It was almost impossible to find a decent lady in J City. The streets were always bustling with extravagant parties, luxury cars, and high-end fashion. When Idris told his parents about his plan, they kicked against it. They could not imagine their own son, the heir to such a massive empire, living in a poor village like a lonely, poor, wretched man. However, Idris convinced them that he was already well known by almost everyone in J City as their son, and so every woman would be willing to do anything to win his heart, concealing their true nature and pretending to be who they were not just to impress him. His parents eventually saw eye to eye with Idris's plan and allowed him to go ahead with it, but they gave him only 2 years to return with a bride, or they would provide one for him by themselves, and he would be left with no choice but to accept any woman they chose for him. For the next 1 month, Idris left his hair unkempt and his beard unattended to, so he would look very tattered and wretched. He even stopped using his usual expensive cologne and wore a scentless oil instead. After that, he went to the market and got some cheap clothes that were already slightly faded. He started his journey to the nearest village he could find. When Idris got to the bus stop, the driver asked him where he wanted to go. Idris thought for a while and answered the driver, "I was a trader, but I lost all that I had. I am looking for a village with good and kind people, where I can re-establish myself from scratch." The driver looked at Idris with pity and compassion and suggested to him, "Let me take you to my village. My people are very nice, and you will have no difficulty re-establishing yourself over there." Idris thanked the driver and bade his boss farewell. They drove for a long time, passing fields of maize and banana plantations. After some hours, they arrived at a village. Unlike Jas City, it was underdeveloped, but they had the basic social amenities. The houses were mostly built with mud bricks, and the air was fresher, untouched by pollution. The driver took Idris to his home and introduced him to his wife and children. The driver's wife welcomed Idris wholeheartedly. After her husband explained Idris's predicament, she prepared a room for him in their home. It was a very small and scanty but neat room, with a simple wooden bed, a thin mattress, and a single chair by the corner. Idris didn't complain. The next day, Idris began his mission of finding a responsible lady he could marry. Adapting to their way of life was difficult. The people in the village woke up early to fetch water from the communal well, and they used firewood to cook, but he was determined to see it through to the end. He started by finding a job and eventually got one at the market square. He was given a wheelbarrow, and his job was to carry foodstuff for customers from the market to their homes. Idris was well built, so the job wasn't too difficult for him. However, the sun was scorching and the dust from the unpaved roads clung to his clothes and skin. Most of the people he offered his services to were rude and unkind to him. They disrespected and talked down on him because of how he was dressed and what he did for a living. After staying in the village for a year and 6 months, Idris was already giving up on the idea of ever finding a responsible bride. He made up his mind to accept whoever his parents were going to provide for him because it was already 2 years. He discussed with the driver and told him that he wished to take a bride. But all the ladies he had met in the past 18 months were all rude and harsh towards him. However, the driver urged him not to give up yet. Instead, he suggested that Idris go to a different market other than the one he had been frequenting since he came to the village. Perhaps he would meet new people, as some villagers preferred the other markets. But he warned Idris that wheelbarrow pushers didn't earn a lot of money there. 1 week after Idris started frequenting the suggested market, he saw 2 ladies in the market while he was scouting around for customers. They had just finished buying quite a lot, so he ran to them, offering to help them carry their purchases. Their names were Lovett and Zara. They obliged, but while Lovett was rude to Idris, Zara was kind towards him. As he carried their purchases on his wheelbarrow to their house, Lovett warned him several times to ensure that none of their products dropped on the floor, while Zara urged him to be careful, as the road was not smooth. The path leading to their house was narrow, lined with small gardens, and had patches of muddy puddles. When they got to their house, Lovett went inside and instructed Zara to pack the items inside the store. Idris offered to help her with the task. When he was done, he asked her, "Why is your sister rude to you? Why did she leave all the work for you? She's my stepsister, and she's older than I am. I guess it's my responsibility to do whatever she instructs," Zara replied, her voice tinged with sadness. They talked a little bit more before she called on Lovett, her elder sister, to pay Idris. Lovett came and threw the money on the floor for Idris to pick up like a beggar. Then she went back inside without another word. Zara apologized for her sister's rudeness and thanked Idris for helping her with the task. From the little conversation Idris had with Zara, he got to know that Zara was an orphan. Her mother had died many years ago, and her father took in another wife who was already Lovett's mother. A few years later, her father also died, leaving her at the mercy of her stepmother, Lami. Zara was being maltreated and ordered around like a slave. She did all the washing, cooking, and cleaning of the house. Her hands were often dry and cracked from scrubbing clothes in cold water. She had nowhere else to go, so she had to endure. Although Lovett was more beautiful than Zara, Idris had already fallen deeply in love with Zara's personality. The next day, Idris asked the driver's wife about Zara. The village was a small one, and everyone knew each other. The driver's wife told Idris that Zara was a very nice and humble lady, and almost everyone in the village loved and admired her. Idris then asked her, if she's loved and admired by everyone, why isn't she married yet? Zara had many suitors, my dear, but Zara, her stepmother, is very wicked. When a wealthy man comes for Zara's hand in marriage, Lami will insist that the man should marry her daughter. Lovett instead. Lami would go ahead and say all sorts of bad things about Zara just to make the suitor reconsider his decision. Idris felt very sad after hearing about Zara and what she had been going through in the hands of her stepmother. He made up his mind that he would marry her. The next day, Idris took his wheelbarrow to the market in anticipation of Zara. He didn't see her for the next few days until a week later. He was fortunate to see her in the market, all alone. The sun was bright that afternoon, and the market was bustling with vendors shouting their prices. He quickly ran to where she stood and placed the sack she held in his wheelbarrow. Zara laughed. "It isn't too heavy. I can carry it myself. Besides, I don't have any money to pay you today." "Don't worry, I will serve you today for free," Idris said with a reassuring smile. Idris followed her until she bought everything she came to buy at the market and then helped her carry the goods home. But he didn't reach her compound. He stopped a few miles before their compound so that her stepmother wouldn't query her for allowing Idris to help her. This continued for 3 months. Whenever Zara came to the market, she would spend more time because she was with Idris. They both enjoyed each other's company. She often brought him small snacks like roasted groundnuts and fruits, making their time together even more enjoyable. Her stepmother noticed that Zara always spent more time in the market over the months and asked Lovett to monitor her. On that particular day that Lovett was asked to monitor Zara and Idris spent some time with each other, talking and laughing after she had finished buying what she came to buy at the market. The sky had started turning a golden hue as they walked home. On their way home, Idris told Zara that he had fallen in love with her and would like to marry her. Zara was shocked at the statement. "But you don't know me," she protested, lowering her gaze shyly. "I know you are kind and generous, Zara, and I want you in my life. Please say you will marry me. You're equally a hardworking and benevolent man, but I'm afraid my stepmother wouldn't make it easy for you. Don't worry about her. If you feel the same way I do, I will take care of the rest." Zara didn't understand what Idris meant by he would take care of the rest, but she accepted to marry him. In joy, Idris lifted her up and held her in a tight embrace. Unknown to them, Lovett was looking at them from afar, her face filled with resentment. Lovett quickly caught up to them and laughed at the both of them. "Ha! A slave falling in love with a beggar. What a perfect couple. I think you suit each other just fine. Don't worry, my mom will hear about this." Then she walked away, leaving Zara and Idris shocked. Idris urged Zara not to worry, but this time he followed her home to meet her stepmother. When they arrived, Lami was already waiting for Zara at the door. The smell of freshly cooked soup filled the air, but the tension was thick. Immediately Zara showed up. She gave her a deafening slap and asked her to kneel down under the sun. Idris felt deeply hurt and sad. Out of anger, he told Lami that he loved Zara and would like to marry her. Lami laughed heartily at his statement and looked at him from head to toe. "You wretched poor fool. Can you afford to take care of yourself, let alone taking care of this thing called Zara? I believe we can manage, Ma. What would it take to have her as my wife, please?" "Well, if you love her so much, I would have given her to you for free, because she's useless to me. But tradition demands that you provide some items. Then give me a list, and I will have the items ready in a week's time, if that's all it takes." Lami was insulted by Idris's air of arrogance. She went inside the house and wrote down a list of expensive items out of anger. She returned and threw the list at him, but the wind blew the paper on which the things were written to the well. Zara knelt down, picked it up, and glanced at the items. On seeing the amount it totaled, she exclaimed. Idris collected the list from her. He simply looked at the total and told her, "I'll be back in a week as promised." Lami laughed at him as he left, believing that Idris, a common wheelbarrow pusher, could not afford the items even if he worked every single minute of his life. Idris went back to the driver's house that afternoon. The driver was at home when he arrived. He told the driver to take him back to J City. The driver was surprised at his sudden request, but took him as requested. When they got to the motor park where they had first met, Idris told the driver to take him to a particular company. "Are you sure?" "That company is one of the biggest companies in J City. Most wealthy people are denied access. Talk more of a struggling man like you. Don't worry, just take me there and I'll pay you." The driver did as Idris instructed and took him to the company he requested. Immediately, the guards outside saw Idris. They quickly raced towards him and collected the bag he was holding. The driver was astonished at their reaction. Idris asked the guards to pay the driver. They gave him a bundle of new notes, exceedingly above the price he had mentioned, and agreed with Idris. Idris thanked the driver and entered the company after promising to reach out to him later. Idris went straight to meet his father in the office and informed him he had found the woman he wanted to marry. Coincidentally, his mother entered the office at the same time with a beautiful lady. She was shocked when she saw Idris dressed like a beggar with dirty and bushy hair. Mom, Dad, I have found a woman that I want to marry. You gave me 2 years, but I was able to do it in a year and 10 months. Idris's father hugged him happily, but his mother appeared a little disappointed. Immediately, the lady who came in with Idris's mother heard what Idris said. She stormed out of the office, with Idris's mother running after her. Idris didn't understand what happened, but his father explained to him that his mother already had someone she wanted him to marry, even before he went in search of his own bride. Idris's father welcomed him wholeheartedly and granted him permission to marry Zara. In 1 week, Idris returned to the driver's village with a convoy of luxury cars and a bullion van, which contained all the items Lami had written down on the list. When the driver and his family saw him, they couldn't believe their eyes. Idris gave the driver a new boss and a lot of money to take care of his family. Then he went to see Lami. Loet and Lami were shocked, so shocked to see Idris looking young and handsome, as opposed to the tattered and unkempt man they knew him to be. The bullion van was parked in front of their house, and some muscular guy started to unload its contents at Lami's front door. Zara was equally astonished by Idris's appearance. She was upset that Idris had lied to her about his true status. Idris ran after her and pleaded for her forgiveness. He explained his reason for doing what he did, and Zara understood him. They hugged each other and entered one of the cars. Loet tried to be nice to Idris on seeing how worried he was, but Idris ignored her and drove off. Idris arrived in J City with Zara and took her to the best hair salon and fashion brand. When they were done fixing Zara up, she looked even more beautiful than Loet and the lady his mother had previously brought to him. Idris took Zara home and introduced her to his family. His father embraced Zara and accepted her as his daughter-in-law, while his mother respected his wishes and welcomed Zara into the family. In a month's time, they had the best and most luxurious wedding of the year. Their wedding was the talk of the town for 2 weeks. It was the feast of the year, and they lived happily and joyfully ever after. This story teaches us that true character and kindness always shine through, no matter the circumstances. Idris chose to disguise himself as a poor man to find a genuine partner, proving that wealth and status should not define love and relationships. Zara, despite being mistreated by her stepmother, remained humble and kind, which ultimately led her to a life of happiness and prosperity. It also reminds us that acts of kindness never go unrewarded. The driver who helped Idris selflessly was later rewarded beyond his expectations, showing that treating others with respect, regardless of their social status, can lead to unexpected blessings. Furthermore, this story highlights the importance of patience and perseverance. Even when Idris was about to give up, he listened to the driver's advice and met Zara, proving that sometimes success is just around the corner when we remain persistent. In life, we should always be humble, diligent, and kind, because true character will always be recognized and rewarded. Never judge people based on appearances, as the person you look down upon today might become your greatest blessing tomorrow. Thank you for watching my channel. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out more interesting and inspiring videos on the channel. Stay tuned for more amazing content. Once upon a time, There lived two sisters who lived completely different lives. Their names were Maya and Ava, and people often wondered if they were truly blood sisters. Maya, the older sister, was a school dropout who married a man 20 years older than herself. Her younger sister, Ava, was well educated and worked in a multinational corporation. The sisters were not particularly close, as Mia often appeared distant and indifferent towards her younger sister, Ava. Maya lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a small garden filled with overgrown weeds. She often spent her days alone, tending to the garden or staring at old family photos that brought bittersweet memories. Her home reflected the struggles she had endured, with worn-out furniture and faded curtains that seemed to echo her inner turmoil. One day, Ava returned home to visit their parents. She met Maya in the house and decided to share her exciting news. "I'm getting married," she said with a bright smile on her face. Their parents leaped for joy, hugging and congratulating her for the news. In a calm but joyful voice, Ava continued revealing to them that she was also pregnant. The room fell silent as the joy that once filled the room disappeared. Ava sat there, confused as she wondered why her parents were suddenly quiet. After what felt like forever, her father spoke up and informed her to bring the man that had piqued an interest in marrying her. Maya could not hold back her anger. She stood up and stared at her parents, asking if they were going to sit back and watch this happen. "I knew it," Mia said as she clenched her fist, her voice trembling with bitterness as she bared her mind to everyone that was present. Maya accused Ava of trying to mock her childlessness. "I knew you would stop at nothing to rub my predicament in my face. You got pregnant just to mock my childlessness," she said to Ava, who stood there frozen and unable to speak, her smile fading as she stared at her sister in disbelief. "Maya, how could you even think that?" Ava asked softly as she tried to calm her sister down. Their parents stood there, confused, unsure of how to calm the storm that was now brewing between their daughters. But Maya had not finished bearing her mind. "All my life I've been the one everyone hated, the one everyone hated, the one everyone whispered about behind closed doors. And now you perfect, successful Ava, have now come to mock my pain. You've taken everything from me, and now you've come to make a ridicule of my situation." Ava's eyes filled with tears as she stepped closer to her sister. "Mia, I have never ever tried to compete with you. I have never wished you harm for one day in my life. I only came here to share my joy with you, my family," she said. But it fell on deaf ears. Tears poured down her eyes as she stormed out of the house, leaving behind an awkward silence that pierced the heart of everyone present. Ava never got to understand why her sister Mia hated her this much. She sat there, confused, as she watched her mother speak to her sister on the phone. "Tell her to abort that pregnancy if she ever wants peace in this family," Mia said to her mother as she hung up the phone. Ava stood there, frozen as she overheard her sister's demands over the phone. The joy of her pregnancy, as well as her upcoming marriage, was overshadowed by her sister's bitterness. Ava tried to shake off the pain, telling herself that Maya was simply hurting and didn't mean her words, but deep inside, Ava knew that Maya was dead serious. Their parents decided to call for a family meeting to address the issues between Maya and her sister, but Maya refused to show up to the meeting. Ava, being so loving and kind, decided to pay her sister a visit at home to see if she could have a word with her. She knocked on Maya's door repeatedly, but Mia refused to let her in. Ava, determined to have a word with her sister, stood there as she sang her sister's favorite song repeatedly. She remembered how Maya always loved to sing the song to her when they were little and believed that Maya would have a change of heart when she heard the song. But her plan